Welcome. We're so excited to have you. My name is Naja Springer-Ali, and I'm a member of the library faculty at the Orchard Ridge Campus Library. On behalf of the OCC Libraries, welcome to the National African American Read-In. We are thrilled to have you in attendance for today's event. This is OCC's 12th year participating in this fantastic national event. If you are an OCC student receiving extra credit, an email confirmation will be sent to you to forward to your instructors. This event is being recorded and will be shared via email. Before we jump into our event, I'd like to take a moment to introduce my co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Allison McFadden-Kiesling. I'm one of the OCC Highland Lakes campus librarians.
Hello, my name is Laniece Tyus, and I'm a student at Oakland Early College and OCC. So what is the African American Read-In?
The African American Read-In was created by the Black Caucus of Teachers of English with a purpose to ensure literacy is an important part of Black History Month activities.
Today, you are going to hear wonderful poems and inspiring excerpts from books by various authors. No need to take notes, as we will include a slide at the end of this event with a list of all the books that were read today.
The theme of the first poem we're about to hear is literacy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being at our read-in today. My name is Carol Benson. I'm one of the librarians at the Royal Oak campus, and I'm going to read a poem about libraries written by Rita Dove. I'm going to be reading out of this book, On the Bus with Rosa Parks, Poems by Rita Dove. It's available at the OCC Royal Oak Library. And a few words about the author. Rita Dove is an American poet and essayist. She was born in 1952. She was the Poet Laureate of the United States from 1993 to 95. She also won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry and many other awards. And I find her writing to be very beautiful and inspiring. So this is a short poem, but even so, it contains a few words that I didn't know the meaning of. So I stopped to look them up. And that's one of the things I love about reading, is the way it expands your vocabulary. So now I'd like to read Maple Valley Branch Library, 1967, by Rita Dove. For a 15-year-old, there was plenty to do. Browse the magazines, slip into the adult section to see what vast tristesse was born of rush hour traffic, décolletés, and the plague of too much money. There was so much to discover: how to lay out a road, the language of flowers, and the place of women in the tribe of moose. There were equations elegant as a French twist, fractal geometry's unwinding maple leaf. I could follow, step by step, the slow disclosure of a pineapple jello mold, or take the path of Harold's purple crayon through the bedroom window and onto a lavender spill of stars. Oh, I could walk any aisle and smell wisdom, put a hand out to touch the rough curve of bound leather, the harsh parchment of dreams. As for the improbable librarian with her salt and paprika upsweep, her British accent, and her sweater clip, mom of a kid I knew from school, I'd go up to her desk and ask for help on bareback rodeo or binary codes, phonics, Gestalt theory, lead poisoning in the late Roman Empire, the play of light in Dutch Renaissance painting. I would claim to be researching pre-Columbian pottery or Chinese foot binding, but all I wanted to know was, tell me what you've read that keeps that half smile afloat above the collar of your impeccable blouse. So I read Gone with the Wind because it was big, and haiku because they were small. I studied history for its rhapsody of dates, lingered over Cubist art for the way it showed all sides of a guitar at once. All the time in the world was there, and sometimes all the world on a single page. As much as I could hold on my plastic card's imprint, I took greedily 6 books, 6 volumes of bliss, the stuff we humans are made of. words and sighs and silence, ink and whips, Brahma and cosine, corsets and poetry and blood sugar levels. I carried it home past 5 blocks of aluminum siding and the old garage where, on its boarded up doors, someone had scrawled, "I can eat an elephant if I take small bites." "Yes," I said to no one in particular. "That's what I'm going to do." So that is Maple Valley Branch Library, 1967 by Rita Dove. Thank you very much for listening and for being here today. I hope you'll dive into some poetry and other writings by African-American authors. Take care.
That was a really nice way to kick things off. Interestingly, Black History Month began as a week-long celebration in the US and evolved to a full month. Black History Month originated in Chicago by Carter G. Woodson in 1926.
That's right. And another cool fact, in 1912, Carter G. Woodson earned his PhD in history from Harvard University. He was the only person of enslaved parentage to earn a PhD in
Where did you get this information
the
from?
Black History Month Research Guide. Accessible from the OCC Libraries website, our Black History Guide links users to titles from past read-in events, ebooks, printed books, streaming videos, and websites that celebrate the rich contributions made by African Americans to our nation.
That's good to know. I'm glad you showed us how to get credible information from the library research guides. Now we're going to hear 2 children's books.
Hello, I'm Darlene Johnson Bignati. I'm a librarian at the Royal Oak campus. Today I'm going to share a work by feminist author, activist, and professor Bell Hooks. Born Gloria Jean Watson, Bell Hooks adopted her pen name in honor of her great-grandmother, Belle Blair Hooks, a woman known for her uncensored tongue and bold actions. She wrote the name in lowercase to focus attention on her words and ideas rather than herself. Her essays, academic articles, and many books always focused on topics dealing with race, gender, and economic inequality. Most were considered controversial, and perhaps none more controversial than the book I'm going to share with you today, Happy to be Nappy. Published in 1999, some Black parents called for the book to be banned as they perceived the word nappy to be a negative description of natural Black hair texture. Her pairing with Caldecott Award-winning author Chris Rashka, who is white, further angered these parents. Nevertheless, the book was nominated for an NAACP Image Award and is considered a celebration of little girls, much like myself, who don't have blonde or straight hair. Happy to be nappy. Girl pie hair smells clean and sweet. Is soft like cotton, flower petals, soft, full of frizz and fuzz. A halo, a crown, a covering for heads that are round. It can be smooth or patted down, pulled tight, cut close. Or just let go so wind can carry it all over the place. Hair to comb, hair to brush, to twist and plait, or just lie flat. Hair for hands to touch and play. Hair to take the gloom away. Sitting still for hands to brush or braid and make the day start hopefully. All kinks gone, all heady of joy. These short, tight naps looks a lot like mine. Or plaited strands all. Let girls go running free. Happy to be nappy. Happy with hair all short and strong. Happy with locks that twist and curl. Just all girl happy. Happy to be nappy hair.
Hello, my name is Tiffany Wright Ofemu, and I'm instructor of early childhood education at Oakland Community College. I'm excited to be with you for the African American read-in to share with you the story of The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. This is a Caldecott winning picture book. It's quite famous in the African American community because it's one of the first picture books to positively depict a young child who was African American as their main character. Ezra Keats received many accolades for doing that, as well as criticisms. The book was actually banned in certain schools and libraries because of his audacity to feature an African-American boy in his book. I'd like to share this with you. He's both the illustrator and author. The Snowy Day. Perfect book for a day like today. One winter morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Snow had fallen during the night. It covered everything as far as he could see. After breakfast, he put on his snowsuit and ran outside. The snow was piled up very high along the street to make a path for walking. Crunch, 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 his feet sank into the snow. He walked with his toes pointing out like this. He walked with his toes pointing in like that. He then dragged his feet slowly to make tracks. And he found something sticking out of the snow that made a new track. It was a stick that was just right for smacking a snow-covered tree. Down fell the snow, plop on top of Peter's head. He thought it would be fun to join the big boys in their snowball fight, but he knew he wasn't old enough, not yet. So he made a smiling snowman, and he made angels. He pretended he was a mountain climber and climbed up a great big tall heaping mountain of snow and slid all the way down. He picked up a handful of snow and another, and still another. He packed it round and firm and put the snowball in his pocket for tomorrow. Then he went into his warm house. He told his mother all about his adventures while she took off his wet socks. He thought and thought and thought about them. Before he got into bed, he looked in his pocket. His pocket was empty. The snowball wasn't there. He felt very sad. While he slept, he dreamed that the sun had melted all the snow away. But when he woke up, his dream was gone. The snow was still everywhere. New snow was falling. After breakfast, he called to his friend from across the hall, and they went out together into the deep, deep snow. The end. The Snowy Day by Ezra Keats. Enjoy.
Did you know that The Snowy Day has topped the New York Public Library all-time checkout list? It has been checked out more than any other book, including Harry Potter. It was checked out 485,583 times.
Wow, that's incredible. Speaking of multiculturalism and diversity in literature, we're going to hear excerpts of readings from 3 books.
Hello, my name is Abby, and the book that I chose to read was The Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Hurston was born on January 7th in 1891 in Alabama, and she died on January 28th, 1960. She's most known for being an author, but she was also an anthropologist and a filmmaker. In her lifetime, she wrote numerous novels and other short stories, but her most famously known book was The Eyes Were Watching God, which was published in September 1937. This book follows the main character, Janie Crawford, and her journey through life, where she explores true love, identity, and gender roles. I'm just going to be reading from chapter 1. Ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. For some, they come with the tide. For others, they sail forever on the horizon, never out of sight, never landing until the watcher turns his eyes away in registration. His dreams mocked to death by time. That is the life of men. Now women, they forget all the things they don't want to remember and remember the things they don't want to forget. The dream is the truth. They act and do things accordingly. So the beginning of this was a woman, and she had come back from burying the dead. Not the dead of sick and ailing with her friends at the pillow and the feet. She had come back from the sodden and the bloated, the sudden dead, their eyes flung wide open in judgment. The people all saw her come because it was sundown. The sun was gone, but he had left his footprints in the sky. It was time for sitting on porches beside the road. It was the time to hear things and talk. These sitters had been tongueless, earless, eyeless conveniences all day long. Mules and other brutes had occupied their skins, but now the sun and the bossmen were gone, so the skins felt powerful and human. They became lords of sounds and lesser things. They passed nations through their mouths. They sat in judgment. Seeing the woman as she was made them remember the envy they had stored up from other times. So they chewed up the back parts of their minds and swallowed with relish. They made burning statements with questions and killing tools out of laughs. It was mass cruelty, a mood come alive. Words walking without masters, walking all together like harmony in a song. What's she doing back here in them overalls? Can't she find no dress to put on? Wear that blue satin dress she left here in. Where all that money her husband took and died and left her. Where that old 40-year-old omen doing with her hair swinging down her back like some young gal. Where she left that young lad of a boy she went off here with. Thought she was gonna marry? Where he left her. What he done with all her money. Betcha he went off with some gal so young she ain't even got no hairs. Why she don't stay in her class. When she got to where they were, she turned her face on the banderlog and spoke. They scrambled a noisy good evening and left their mouths setting open and their ears full of hope. Her speech was pleasant enough, but she kept walking straight into her gate. The porch couldn't talk for her looking. The men noticed her firm buttocks, like she had grapefruits on her hip pockets, the great rope of black hair swinging to her waist and unraveling in the wind like a plume. Then, her precious breast trying to bore holes in her shirt. They, the men, were saying with the mind what they lost with the eye. The women took the faded shirt and muddy overalls and laid them away for remembrance. It was a weapon against her strength, and if it turned out of no significance, still, it was a hope that she might fall to their level someday. But nobody moved, nobody spoke, nobody even thought to swallow spit until after her gate slammed behind her.
Hi, my name is Stacy Charlotte Von Ordan. Thank you for coming to the African American Read-In. Today I'm going to be reading to you from the book Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. And in the background, you will see a slideshow presentation of Black women in science fiction and fantasy and speculative fiction. Binti is one of my favorites, and there are plenty more on this list to enjoy. So have a good time with this, and I hope you find some good things to read. 15 minutes later, I purchased a ticket and boarded the shuttle. The sun was beginning to peek over the horizon. As I moved past the seated passengers, far too aware of the bushy ends of my plaited hair, softly slapping people in the face, I cast my eyes to the floor. Our hair is thick, and mine has always been very thick. My old aunties like to call it ododo, because it grew wild and dense like ododo grass. Just before leaving, I'd rolled my plaited hair with fresh, sweet-smelling ojize I'd made specifically for this trip. Who knew what I looked like to these people who didn't know my people so well? A woman leaned away from me as I passed, her face pinched as if she smelled something foul. "Sorry," I whispered, watching my feet and trying to ignore the stares of almost everyone in the shuttle. Still, I couldn't help glancing around. Two girls who might have been a few years older than me covered their mouths with hands so pale that they looked untouched by the sun. Everyone looked as if the sun was his or her enemy. I was the only Himba on the shuttle. I quickly found and moved to a seat. The shuttle was one of the new sleek models that looked like the bullets my teachers used to calculate ballistic coefficients during my A-levels when I was growing up. These ones glided fast over land using a combination of air current, magnetic fields, and exponential energy. An easy craft to build if you had the equipment and the time. It was also a nice vehicle for hot desert terrain where the roads leading out of town were terribly maintained. My people didn't like to leave the homeland. I sat in the back so I could look out for the large window. I could see the lights from my father's astrolabe shop and the sandstorm analyzer my brother had built at the top of the route. That's what we called my parents' big house. 6 generations of my family had lived there. It was the oldest house in my village, maybe the oldest house in the city. It was made of stone and concrete, cool in the night, hot in the day. And it was patched with solar plates and covered with bioluminescent plants that liked to stop glowing just before the sunrise. My bedroom was at the top of the house. The shuttle began to move, and I stared at it until I couldn't see it anymore. "What am I doing?" I whispered. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you had a good time with this video. And this book will be in the Southfield Library for checkout if you would like to read this and the other 2 that follow from it. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Byrne, the provost at Oakland Community College, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with you my favorite book, or one of my favorite books. This is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. It was written in 1970. It was her first book, and Toni Morrison passed away in 2019, sadly. Here's a picture of her. She wrote many, many books afterwards, which I've also read. And I really have always been affected by this one. I think partially I chose it because I recall working on it with my students, teaching it when I was a faculty member here many years ago. And it's always stuck with me, both in how it was structured and also how my students reacted to it. So The Bluest Eye is a story of a young African-American girl, Pecola Breedlove, who lives in rural Ohio in some very difficult circumstances. And it's narrated by a neighbor and classmate of hers, Claudia, who has some of those same challenges, but also has a different kind of a family structure. And there's a lot of contrasts in this book. One important one being the experience of Claudia and the experience of Pecola. The section that I'm going to read from is a section called Winter. It's divided into 4 sections by season. And on this very cold January day, I thought I would share that portion with you. The winter section begins with Claudia's introduction of the season, and then transitions into her perspective on a new student at school, and how that student sort of intersects with her own sense of herself, and Piccola also. So I hope you enjoy hearing this, and I look forward to anybody who want to discuss The Bluest Eye with me doing so. Thank you. My daddy's face is a study. Winter moves into it and presides there. His eyes become a cliff of snow threatening to avalanche. His eyebrows bend like black limbs of leafless trees. His skin takes on the pale, cheerless yellow of winter sun. For a jaw, he has the edge of a snowbound field dotted with stubble. His high forehead is the frozen sweep of the Erie, hiding currents of gelid thoughts that eddy in darkness. Wolf killer turned hawk fighter, he worked night and day to keep one from the door and one from under the windowsills. A Vulcan guarding the flames. He gives us instruction about which doors to keep closed or open for proper distribution of heat, lays kindling by, discusses qualities of coal, and teaches us how to rake, feed, and bank the fire. And he will not unrazor his lips until spring. Winter tightened our heads with a band of cold and melted our eyes. We put pepper in the feet of our stockings, Vaseline on our faces, and stared through dark icebox mornings at 4 stewed prunes, slippery lumps of oatmeal, and cocoa with a roof of skin. But mostly we waited for spring, where there could be gardens. By the time this winter had stiffened itself into a hateful knot that nothing could loosen, something did loosen, or rather someone. A someone who splintered the knot into silver threads that tangled us, netted us, made us long for the dull chafe of the previous boredom. The disruptor of seasons was a new girl in school named Maureen Peel, a high yellow dream child with long brown hair braided with 2 lynch ropes that hung down her back. She was rich, at least by our standards, as rich as the richest of the white girls, swaddled in comfort and care. The quality of her clothes threatened to derange Frida, that's the narrator's sister, and me. Patent leather shoes with buckles, a cheaper version of which we got only at Easter and which had disintegrated by the end of May. Fluffy sweaters, the color of lemon drops, tucked into skirts with pleats so orderly they astounded us. Brightly colored knee socks with white borders, a brown velvet coat trimmed in white rabbit fur, and a matching muff. There was a hint of spring in her slow green eyes, something summery in her complexion, and a rich autumn ripeness in her walk. She enchanted the entire school. When teachers called on her, they smiled encouragingly. Black boys didn't trip her in the halls. White boys didn't stone her. White girls didn't suck their teeth when she was assigned to be their work partners. Black girls stepped aside when she wanted to use the sink in the girls' toilet, and their eyes genuflected under sliding lids. She never had to search for anyone to eat with in the cafeteria. They flocked to the table of her choice, where she opened fastidious luncheons, shaming our jelly-stained bread with egg salad sandwiches cut into 4 dainty squares, pink frosted cupcakes, stalks of celery and carrots, proud dark apples. She even bought and liked white milk. Frida and I were bemused, irritated, and fascinated by her. We looked hard for flaws to restore our equilibrium, but had to be content at first with uglying up her name, changing Maureen Peel to meringue pie. Later, a minor epiphany was ours when we discovered that she had a dog tooth, a charming one to be sure, but a dog tooth nonetheless. And when we found out that she had been born with 6 fingers on each hand and that there was a little bump where each extra one had been removed, we smiled. They were small triumphs, but we took what we could get, snickering behind her back and calling her 6-finger dog tooth meringue pie. But we had to do it alone, for none of the other girls would cooperate with our hostility. They adored her. So I hope this entices those of you who haven't read The Bluest Eye to keep going. Actually, you would start at the beginning. I believe you start in summer and then you end in spring. So this is one of the middle sections. I wish you good reading. Thanks.
Zora Neale Hurston's words are profound, like her quote and book title, "I love myself when I'm laughing, and then again when I'm looking mean and impressive." And now we're going to hear excerpts from 3 biographies.
Hi, I'm Soren, and today I'm going to be reading a little bit of Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. Trevor Noah was born on February 20th, 1984, making him a Pisces. The book got its title because Trevor's mom was South African and Trevor's dad was white. At the time, this was illegal, so he was quite literally born a crime. This book goes into heavy detail about tribal rivalry in South Africa, his mother's strict rules, and segregation. My mother sat next to me, holding baby Andrew. She looked out the window at the passing road and then leaned over to me and whispered, "Trevor, when he slows down at the next intersection, I'm going to open the door and we are going to jump." I didn't hear a word of what she was saying because by that point, I completely nodded off. When she came to the next traffic light, the driver eased off the gas a bit and took a look around to check the road. My mother reached over, pulled the sliding door open, grabbed me, and threw me out as far as she could. Then she took Andrew, curled herself in a ball around him, and leaped out behind me. It felt like a dream until the pain hit. Bam! I smacked hard against the pavement. My mother landed right beside me, and we tumbled and tumbled and rolled and rolled. I was wide awake now. I went from half asleep to what in the world? Eventually, I came to a stop and pulled myself up, completely disoriented. I looked around and saw my mother already on her feet. She turned and looked at me and screamed, "Run." So I ran and she ran, and nobody ran like me and my mom. It's weird to explain, but I just knew what to do. It was an animal instinct, learned in a world where violence was always lurking and waiting to erupt. In the townships, when police came swooping in with their riot gear and armored helicopters, I knew, run for cover, run and hide. I knew that as a 5-year-old. Had I lived a different life, getting thrown out of a speeding minibus might have fazed me. I would have stood there like an idiot going, "What's happening, Mom? Why are my legs so sore?" But there was none of that. Mom said run, and I ran. I ran like the gazelle runs from the lion. I ran. The men stopped the minibus and got out and tried to chase us, but they didn't stand a chance. We smoked them. I think they were in shock. I still remember glancing back and seeing them give up with a look of utter bewilderment on their faces. What just happened? Who would have thought a woman with 2 small children could run so fast? They didn't know they were dealing with the reigning champion of the Marvell College Sports Day. We kept going until we made it to 24-hour patrol station and called the police. By then, all the men were gone. I still didn't know why any of this had happened. I'd been running on pure adrenaline. Once we stopped running, I realized how much pain I was in. I looked down and all the skin on my arms was scraped. I was cut up and bleeding all over. Mom was too. My baby brother was fine though, incredibly. My mom had wrapped herself around him and he'd come through without a scratch. I turned to her in shock. "What was that? Why are we running?" "What do you mean, why are we running? Those men were trying to kill us." "You never told me that. You just threw me out of the car." "I did tell you. Why didn't you jump?" "Jump? I was asleep." "So I should have left you there for them to kill you? At least they would have woken me up before they killed me." Back and forth we went. I was too confused and too angry about getting thrown out of the car to realize what happened. My mother had saved my life. As we caught our breath and waited for the police to come and drive us home, she said, "Well, at least we're safe. Thank God."
Hello, my name is Camille, and the piece that I am going to be reading today is Home by Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou lived from 1928 until 2014. Her first novel, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, was published when she was only 17 years old, which I find really inspirational. Some interesting fun facts about Maya Angelou is that she was 6 feet tall, which is quite tall, and she was not only the first Black conductor of a cable car in San Francisco, but she was also the first female conductor of a cable car in San Francisco. And I am going to be reading her piece, Home, which tells us quite a lot about her life. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, but from the age of 3, I grew up in Stamps, Arkansas, with my paternal grandmother, Annie Henderson, and my father's brother, Uncle Willie, and my only sibling, my brother Bailey. At 13, I joined my mother in San Francisco. Later, I studied in New York City. Throughout the years, I have lived in Paris, Cairo, West Africa, and all over the United States. Those are facts, but facts to a child are merely words to memorize. My name is Johnny Thomas. My address is 220 Center Street. All facts, which have little to do with the child's truth. For real growing up world in Stamps was a continual struggle against a condition of surrender. Surrender first to the grown-up human beings who I saw every day, all day, Black and very, very large. Then submission to the idea that Black people were inferior to white people, who I saw rarely. Without knowing why exactly, I did not believe that I was inferior to anyone except maybe my brother. I knew I was smart, but I knew that Bailey was smarter. Maybe because he reminded me often and even suggested that he was the smartest person in the world. He came to that decision when he was 9 years old. The South in general, and Stamps, Arkansas in particular, had had hundreds of years of experience in demoting even large adult Blacks to psychological dwarfs. Poor white children had the license to address lauded and older Blacks by their first names or by any names they could create. Thomas Wolfe warned in the title of America's great novel that you can't go home again. I enjoyed that book, but I never agreed with the title. I believe that one can never leave home. I believe that one carries the shadows, the dreams, the fears and dragons of home under one's skin, at the extreme corners of one's eyes, and possibly in the gristle of the earlobes. Home is that youthful region where a child is the only real living inhabitant. Parents, siblings, and neighbors are mysterious apparitions who come, go, and do strange, unfathomable things in and around the child, the region's only enfranchised citizen. Geography, as such, has little meaning to the child observer. If one grows up in the Southwest, the desert and open skies are natural. New York with the elevators and subway rumble and millions of people, and Southeast Florida with its palm trees and sun and beaches, are to the children of those regions the way the outer world is, has been, and will always be. Since the child cannot control that environment, she has to find her own place, a region where only she lives and no one else can enter. I am convinced that most people do not grow up. We find parking spaces and honor our credit cards. We marry and dare to have children, call that growing up. I think what we do mostly is grow old. We carry the accumulation of years in our bodies and on our faces, but generally our real selves, the children inside, are still innocent and shy as magnolias. We may act sophisticated and worldly, but I believe we feel safest when we go inside ourselves and find home, a place where we belong, and maybe the only place we really do.
Hello, my name is Christina Marshall, and I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice. Today, I will be reading an excerpt from Michelle Obama's memoir entitled Becoming. This book deals with many issues,
that we all face, like the loss of a parent, being criticized, being called out for belonging to a different race, and also how to cultivate healthy relationships. I will now begin by reading an excerpt. But 3 years of keeping up with ambitious kids at Whitley Young had taught me that I was something more. I wasn't going to let one person's opinion dislodge everything I thought I knew about myself. Instead, I switched my method without changing my goal. I would apply to Princeton and a scattershot selection of other schools, but without any more input from my college counselor. Instead, I sought help from someone who actually knew me, Mr. Smith, my assistant principal and neighbor. He had seen my strength as a student and furthermore trusted me with his own kids. He agreed to write me a letter of recommendation. I've been so lucky enough now in my life to meet all sorts of extraordinary and accomplished people. World leaders, inventors, musicians, astronauts, athletes, professors, entrepreneurs, artists and writers, pioneering doctors and researchers. Some, though not enough of them, are women. Some, though not enough of them, are Black or of color. Some were born poor and have lived lives that too many of us would appear to have been unfairly heaped with adversary. And yet still, they seem to operate as if they've had every advantage in the world. What I've learned is this: all of them have had doubters. Some continue to have roaring, stadium-sized collections of critics and naysayers who will shout, "I told you so," at every little misstep or mistake. The noise doesn't go away. But the most successful people I know have figured out how to live with it, to lean on people who believe in them, and to push onward with their goal. Michelle Obama further says in the preface of her book, "There's still a lot I don't know about America, about life, about what the future might bring. But I do know myself. My father, Fraser, taught me to work hard, laughed often, and keep my word. My mother, Marion, showed me how to think for myself and to use my voice. It is my hope that we all have the ability to use our voice."
These biographies make you feel empowered, especially during difficult times. It's good to be reminded that we are resilient. Our next reading is from the Harlem Renaissance.
What's the Harlem Renaissance?
According to the Library of Congress, the Harlem Renaissance was a period in American history from the 1920s and 1930s. Within their communities, creative expression became an outlet for writers, musicians, artists, and photographers, with a particular concentration in Harlem, New York. Let's turn our attention to Seth reading Langston Hughes.
Hi, my name is Seth Rosker, and I'll be talking about Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes, known by many as the leader of the Harlem Renaissance, was born in 1901 and passed away in 1967 at the age of 66. Hughes was accredited for being one of the earliest inventors of the literary art form named jazz poetry. Interestingly, Hughes received an honorable doctorate's award from Howard University for his incredible writings that shaped the writing world. In more recent years, Langston Hughes is still receiving honor for all the accomplishments he made and lives he changed. He had a middle school named after him in 1979 and a high school named after him in his honor in 2009. And there's even a Langston Hughes medal that is given out each year since 1978 that is awarded to highly distinguished writers throughout the world for their impressive works of poetry, fiction, drama, autobiography, and critical essays that help to honor and continue the legacy of Langston Hughes. I chose Langston Hughes for many, many different reasons. The first reason being that throughout his 38 years of writing, he was always able to capture the reader's attention and truly make it feel like you were in his shoes. Another reason being that a lot of his poems and stories still carry weight in our modern day society. I chose this first poem named Young Sailor because it can be applied easily to our modern life. The message of this poem, in my eyes, is to slow down and see the natural world for the beauty that it truly is, instead of working your entire life and waiting until after to see the world's true beauty. He carries his own strength and his own laughter, his own today and his own hereafter. This strong young sailor of the wide seas, what is money for? To spend, he says, and wine to drink, and women to love, and today for joy, and tomorrow for joy, and the green sea for strength, and the brown land for laughter, and nothing hereafter. This is from the Collected Works of Langston Hughes, Volume 1, the poems from 1921 to 1940.
I love that poem. To quote Dorothy West, the last living member of the Harlem Renaissance, to know how much there is to know the beginning of learning to live. I think we're all learning a lot today. Now we're going to hear readings from one of my favorite authors, Maya Angelou. Hello, my name is Laniece Tyus, and I am a student at OCC. And today I will be reading a poem out of the book called The Complete Collected Poems of Maya Angelou, and I will be reading the poem called The Human Family. I think one of the main things she tried to highlight in this poem is that even though we may have differences with one another in the family and there may be superficial differences, we have a lot of things in common and we are the same, and we shouldn't let that get in the way of the bond that you have with your family. And it reads, I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some thrive on comedy, some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they really live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse, bemuse, delight, brown and pink and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane, who really were the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts while lying side by side. We live and lose in China, we weep on England's moors, and laugh and moan in Guinea, and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, and are born and die in Maine. In minor ways we differ, in major we're the same. I know the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are not more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. Thank you.
My name is Peter Provenzano, and I'm Chancellor at Oakland Community College. Today, I've selected a poem from Maya Angelou, who just has a wonderful way with words. She was born in 1928 and passed away in 2014. The poem that I've selected is called Alone, and it is from her book of poems named Oh Pray My Wings Are Gonna Fit Me Well. And it was written in 1975. Let's take a listen. Lying, thinking, last night, how to find my soul a home, where water is not thirsty and bread loaf is not stone. I came up with one thing, and I don't believe I'm wrong, that nobody, but nobody can make it out here alone. Alone, all alone, nobody, but nobody can make it out here alone. There are some millionaires with money they can't use. Their wives run around like banshees. Their children sing the blues. They've got expensive doctors to cure their hearts of stone, but nobody, no, nobody can make it out here alone. Alone, all alone, nobody, but nobody can make it out here alone. Now, if you listen closely, I'll tell you what I know. Storm clouds are gathering. The wind is going to blow. The race of man is suffering, and I could hear the moan, because nobody, but nobody can make it out here alone. Alone, all alone, nobody, but nobody can make it out here alone. Thank you for watching. Be sure to take great care of each other.
That was wonderful. I like to read these titles. Where can I find them? Unmute, Allison.
Thank you. The OCC librarians can help you find these titles and other interesting works by African American authors for you to enjoy. This is the library homepage where you can find lots of helpful information, but today we want to draw your attention to the Ask a Librarian link. From this link, you can chat immediately with the librarian 24/7. You can also email a librarian directly for a dialogue, or you can schedule a Zoom reference session with an OCC librarian. And last, but certainly not least, you can also visit one of the 5 OCC Highland Lakes OCC campuses in person, or call us on the phone, and we'll help you during regular library hours. All the information you need is in the link. Please ask a librarian. We're here to help.
Children's and young adult author Walter Dean Myers once said, "Once I begin to read, I begin to exist. I am what I read, all the books, all the papers, all the stories. Reading empowers you and enriches your world." We began the African American read-in with a poem titled Maple Valley Branch Library, 1967, published in the book On the Bus with Rosa Parks by Rita Dove. I thought it fitting to close this year's event with a poem from the same book to reinforce the joy and importance of reading. But first, I'd like to thank you for being here. Thank you to all our readers today, my co-hosts, Laniece and Allison, and of course, Ken Falk. After this poem, there will be a list of the material read today and the order it was read.
The First Book by Rita Dove. Open it. Go ahead. It won't bite. Well, maybe a little. More a nip-like, a tingle. It's pleasurable, really. You see, it keeps on opening. You may fall in. Sure, it's hard to get started. Remember learning to use knife and fork? Dig in. You'll never reach bottom. It's not like it's the end of the world. Just the world as you think you know it. The First Book by Rita Dove.
We hope this event inspire you to read some of these titles or explore other African American authors. Remember, you can get all of these titles and more at the OCC Library. Thank you.